I keep talking about this on streams, so I guess I really should talk about it openly, make a video about it, because I guess I have been on a bit of a string of just like going after rando YouTubers, Went after Review Tech USA, went after like I don't even know, like a bunch of other like just random things have come up over the past couple of weeks. I have recently been watching a lot of DBDR. He has returned to YouTube and is as black pilled as ever. Like, hi guys, my life is so terrible. Like, nothing's ever gonna work out. It's just a gigantic cope. It really is. It's just an excuse to like come on YouTube and be miserable and like kind of indulge in the lavishings of like, other people who kind of have the same kind of like bleak worldview. This idea that like you'll never be successful, you'll never be happy, you'll never find love. And there is this very strong, I feel like this is the case with like every black pilled individual, by the way, is that like they themselves are the problem. This is like the reality of like every black pilled individual I've ever seen, is that like they all cry about being judged by other people all the time, even though they're extraordinarily judgmental of other people. They always cry about never having a girlfriend and yet like never really try and relate to other people. It's really obvious if you like look in between the lines of these individuals that their lives aren't that bad. It's entirely in their heads, and like you can't really take it seriously. And I think that goes doubly so if you're someone like me who comes from like a worse situation than like DBDR was ever in, came out of it, and it's when you do that, like when you like go through that like kind of when you go through that kind of like personal development, like it's just impossible to take what these people say seriously. Like this idea that like there's no work at all. Like what? Like you can't find a job. What? The fact that like your family doesn't love you, the fact that you can't relate to other people, that's entirely your fault. It is. Like that's the big like takeaway black pillars really need to understand, is that like they need to take responsibility for their own personal lives, and they just don't do it. They really do expect that other people will fix their problems for them, and it just isn't going to happen, right? Only they can fix the problems in their personal lives, right? Only they can kind of like make improvements and make gradual developments. But like my thing with like DBDR, it's really interesting because like I do genuinely think he has grown and developed over like the past 5 years or so, where he has been able to get a job, he has been able to get away from his shit parents, who are obviously shit. Like he has been able to like cut off like toxic friend groups and stuff like that. That's all stuff he had to do, right? Like I do feel like genuinely that like DBDR is like, well. Assuming that like his stories are true, which I mean, I guess, like I do genuinely think that like going by what he's told us is that he's like well on his way to becoming successful, and that like this idea that like he's just this like reprehensible, ugly person is just completely and totally wrong. It does need to be said that like black pillars just don't like taking responsibility for their own actions. It's always someone else's fault. And I do find this really interesting, like seeing how this like channel has developed. Taking a break from YouTube for a bit. Being homeless supposedly. I'm very interested in seeing at like what point he starts to acknowledge that like his life is getting better, because that's like very evident to me as someone who's like casually been watching these videos. I never heard of him until like fairly recently. Someone who's been casually going through his backlog, like you can totally see like as these videos progress that he's like slowly like fixing the problems with his life, cutting off his parents, cutting off his like toxic friend group, finding better and better work, right? Like you clearly see like that he does have people around that he does get to relate to, and like clearly he's in a way better place than he was before. So like that begs the question, like, why the black pill? You know, if your life is getting better, then like what's with this idea that like everything is just completely unfixable? Because that just isn't true at all. And it never was really. Like he always says that, like, well, immediately after high school, like nobody cares, you know, nobody cares about high school. Nobody cares like immediately after high school. Like, do you know how many people I know who were like hugely popular and successful in high school, only to like completely fall off, you know, in the following decade due to like alcohol and drug abuse and like refusing to work and stuff like that. You know, it's very, very common. You know, the peaked in high school thing is a meme for a reason. It's like a very, very observable phenomenon. And this idea that like you don't have to try hard and you don't have to work because like, well, you're already so successful. You already have it made. And then like you just get outclassed by people like Harmon Smith, who actually like, you know, do come from nothing, have no backgrounds, no prospects at all, and like learn how to like work hard and like just surpass them and like fairly quickly, honestly, to be completely honest with you. Um, to me, like I think that like the next 30 years is going to be like this very, very interesting dynamic. You're going to see like this really weird kind of like difference between like everyone who just spent like their youth coasting versus people who actually had to like work for it. You know, I do kind of feel like already that like that the difference is like very palpable, and I feel like DBDR is kind of stuck in his misery bubble to really acknowledge it. But like, yeah, once he like gets that first major like step, that next major step up, and actually gets an apartment and stuff like that, like basically all of his problems should be over, right? Like he should be able to like start thinking about buying a house and getting married and like, you know, just continuing to improve his life. And he is a really good example of like why you need to do that. You know, like it isn't impossible to succeed in spite of your overwhelming circumstances. It's not like it's not a bad thing to have to work or work a lot. You know, you're not a loser because people didn't like you in high school or like your teachers didn't care about you at all. Like, you know, everyone goes through that. Like it's you're not special in that regard. That's definitely something that like black pillars are kind of weird about, is that they really think they're special. They really think they're different. They really think that they're like different from other people, and they're just really not. You know, if DBDR was so reprehensible and so terrible, then like there wouldn't be so many people following him and like wishing that he would succeed. That's like my genuine take on it, is that like I think DBDR has like way more going for him than he realizes, and the sooner he realizes that, the better.